When you hear the term Ultra, you would typically associate that with the best, or extreme, or loaded. In fact, the term Ultra comes from Latin and it means beyond. So what happens when you slap that term to a product, especially a smartphone? Well, according to Samsung, this will change the photography game. It'll help you create without boundaries. It should also be able to hold up with anything and everything you throw at it, whether if it's leveraging 5G, putting it through extreme conditions, capturing high-resolution photos and videos without compromising on storage, blistering performance, a battery that can keep up to your demands, a display that's revolutionary. You get the point. Oh, and let's not forget the Ultra price tag that comes with it. In this case, $1,400 for people who live in the United States, and for our lovely Canadians, $2,300 for a phone. I repeat, for a phone. You see, I've been using the S20 Ultra for the past 10 weeks, and I'm still having trouble figuring out who this is for. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a lot of things about the S20 Ultra, but I also have some thoughts, some mini rants, because this is the most expensive smartphone that I've ever held, and it deserves to be treated with the utmost respect and scrutiny. So sit back, grab a drink or a snack, or maybe both, because this was going to be a long one, and I'll leave timestamps in the description down below if you want to get to a certain segment. So let's get to it after this.
Corsair Dark Rock RGB Pro is a mouse for every type of gamer with 50 million arm-run switches, lighting bling, 2 side grips for better comfort, a Type-C connector with 50-hour battery life, and a 3-way operation mode with Corsair's Slipstream hyperfast wireless technology. Check it out below.
Alright, first things first, design. It's a minor upgrade over the S10 series, but it still looks pretty when you unbox it for the first time, of course. But that shine only lasts for about 5 minutes. As you can see, this is what it really looks like when you start using it extensively without a case. But you probably knew that. Let's also address the elephant in the room. That huge, thick, jacked camera bump. Listen, it might not be the prettiest thing that you've ever seen, but Samsung had no choice. This phone has 4 cameras. Now, if you decide to place this flat on a table, prepare to get used to this. Pretty sure you can make a rap song out of that. Now, in a world where we're starting to see the competition coming out with unique ways to hide fingerprints and adding contoured matte finishes at the back to make it look fresh and classy, the S20 Ultra, in my opinion, looks dated. Perhaps give us different color options like a ceramic blue option, because the S20 Plus and the S20 have those options, or a different texture at the back to make it look unique compared to the competition. I really wished if they did something different here, because to me, the S20 series just looks like a copy and paste from the S10 with minor tweaks here and there, and that's about it. Oh, and the other thing that I should mention is the size and the weight of this phone. For comparison, it's about the same size as the OnePlus 8 Pro, but it weighs more than 200 grams. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but if you're like me using it one-handed lying down on a couch, you will definitely experience fatigue, which could result in unexpected disasters that shall remain unknown. Seriously, I miss using smaller phones, and this ain't it, folks. Next up, the display. And Samsung pulled something completely out of the ordinary. You see, with previous Samsung phones, we're used to curved screens around the edges, and I've had numerous issues with palm rejection, which to an extent I was able to address through software settings, but this time, they took a step back and went with a flat screen with a gentle curve that's barely noticeable, just to give the phone that bezel-less look. And the result of that is that you get better grip when you're holding the phone in one hand, no accidental touches, which is awesome, and you can watch content without any distractions from glare that you typically notice with aggressively curved displays. This is exactly what a phone should function like, and I'm happy that Samsung learned from their mistakes. The screen spans across 6.9 inches, and it is gorgeous, guys. Samsung's AMOLED technology is one of the best out there, and it offers vibrant colors with deeper blacks. However, I really wished if it got brighter outdoors like the 8 Pro with its peak brightness at 1000 nits. But let's not forget, it's really sharp too, since it features Quad HD Plus resolution, and the most notable improvement over last year's S10 is the upgraded refresh rate from 60Hz to 120Hz. But there is more to that story. You see, for some unknown reason, Samsung decided to cap that buttery smooth 120Hz experience at 1080p. And that has caused a bit of controversy over the internet, which, I mean, we should have all expected. Now, this is not a chipset limitation because the OnePlus 8 Pro, for instance, can do both Quad HD and 120Hz without a problem at the same time, and it features the same specs as the S20 Ultra. So, what exactly are you giving up here? Well, if you're used to watching 1440p content on YouTube or any other platform, you won't be able to do that on the S20 Ultra because you will be limited to 1080p. Now, you can just go back to the settings and enable Quad HD at 60Hz, but that completely defeats the purpose of getting the smartphone in the first place. Now, does screen resolution really matter for a screen this size? It really depends on how you look at things. You see, our eyes have a physical limit when it comes to spotting individual pixels. I personally can't notice any difference between Quad HD and Full HD on a smartphone, so it might not be a deal breaker for some of you out there, but there is the other side. There is the other side of the spectrum where people want everything. They're not willing to compromise on screen resolution for refresh rate because, you know, they're paying close to $1,400 for this thing. So compromises shouldn't be a thing. Honestly, I don't see a point in calling this phone Ultra anymore. With that being said, I have to give credit to Samsung for delivering that fast 120Hz experience constantly because they haven't baked any dynamic modes on this phone that switches refresh rates depending on the type of content that you're going through on your smartphone. I'll give you a perfect example. On my OnePlus 8 Pro, when I'm scrolling through YouTube or Talon, which is my third-party Twitter app, or some other apps, the phone actually tends to lag quite a bit and it almost feels like I'm using a 60Hz display even though the phone is set to Quad HD at 120Hz. When I flip over to the S20 Ultra, the refresh rate is constant regardless of the app that I'm using on a regular basis. Now at this point, you might be wondering about battery life because when you keep adding features on top of features, the battery ends up being the victim ultimately. Now when I switched over to this phone, I was getting really bad battery life. How bad, you may be wondering? Plugging in during the middle of the day kind of situation, which was definitely not easy, especially in the middle of road trips. Mind you, this was before quarantine season. I was averaging 3.5 to 4 hours of screen on time, which was not what I expected from a phone this caliber. But through the magical powers of software updates, it kept getting better. That's right. I'm now getting like a day and a half to 2 days if I push it really hard, which is definitely awesome. So if you're a power user, you don't have to worry about it. Even with the 120Hz mode enabled full time, you're just good to go. So Samsung made the right call by jamming in a 5,000 mAh battery to keep up with that fast screen. By the way, my sample has the Snapdragon 865 SoC, and I am aware that in certain regions where Samsung's offering Exynos models, the battery life does tend to suffer quite a bit. So if you are looking for the S20 Ultra, just make sure you grab the one with the 865 processor just because it's a lot more power efficient compared to the Exynos variants. The ultrasonic fingerprint sensor is still present on the S20 Ultra, just like the S10. They haven't made any major improvements here. Honestly, I was really hoping to see Samsung bring something different here, like a secure face unlock system like the Pixel 4, because I really missed face unlock on that smartphone just because it worked every time, regardless of the lighting condition. Even in pitch black, the IR tracking was spot on. And yeah, I mean, if you're a smartphone manufacturer thinking of slapping the term Ultra on your phones, you want to make sure that you're bringing something beyond customers' imagination, something that you can compete against, but that's not the case here. Now, with that being said, I haven't had any issues with the fingerprint sensor. It's fast. I also love the fact that you can simply unlock your smartphone with the screen turned off. So that's pretty cool. Glancing over the rest of the features, it's got the IP68 dust and water resistant rating, expandable storage up to 1 terabyte, Qi wireless charging, though keep in mind that it's not as fast as OnePlus's proprietary 30-watt warp charge. Basically, they've just brought everything from the S10 to the S20 without making any tweaks. The speakers sound great. You're still getting that stereo imaging with the earpiece and the bottom-facing speaker. Call quality has also been excellent. I haven't heard any complaints from anyone who I've been talking to on the other side. And the haptic vibration motor on this phone is amazing. It's way stronger than the OnePlus 8 Pro, and I'll promise you, in fact, I'll guarantee you, you will never miss a notification or a phone call because is absolutely amazing. It's the best. Moving on to software, Samsung's One UI has matured slightly over these past few years, but it still comes with bloatware apps like Samsung Health, Samsung Globe, Samsung SmartThings, Samsung Internet. The list just goes on. They really want you to get into their ecosystem, but I ended up removing most of them. Now, you might not be familiar with this layout, and that's because I've customized it with my favorite launcher, widgets, and icon packs. In fact, if you're interested in a complete walkthrough on how I set up my Android smartphone, I have made a dedicated video covering that, and you can check it out right over here. Ever since I switched from the Pixel 4, I've had to get used to a few things like the full screen gesture navigation. Samsung does it slightly differently, so instead of a single bar that you typically find on Android 10, you now have 3 separate bars. One for going back, one for jumping back to the home screen, and one for recent apps. I was really annoyed by the back gesture because on the Pixel 4 and the OnePlus 8 Pro, all you had to do was swipe left to right on any app, but on the S20, you have to swipe up from the bottom left corner to make it work. I'm sure over time you'll get used to it. In fact, if you're not a fan of full screen gestures, you can bring back the dedicated nav buttons, so that's pretty cool. Now, Samsung did remove the dedicated Bixby button, which, thank you so much. I don't know why that was there in the first place on previous phones, but they've actually mapped it to the power button. So if you hold the power button, if you want to turn off your smartphone, it actually ends up activating Bixby. Now, there is a workaround to this. If you hold down the volume down and power button, it'll bring up the power off options. And if you want to make life less complicated, you can head over to the side key settings and choose the power off option under the press and hold section. Other than that, the software experience has been great. You still have customization options with the widgets and the lock screen. The theme store is still here, and I will warn you that most of them are paid versions and quite frankly useless. Personally, Samsung's One UI is not my cup of tea. I like Oxygen OS from OnePlus and the stock UI that Google offers, but you don't have to be on the same boat as I am. Finally, let's wrap things up with the camera performance. This is where you would expect the phone to shine given its Ultra badge and the triple camera setup. Well, technically quad, but I'll get to that in a bit. So for starters, you get a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle sensor, a 108 megapixel standard wide angle, and a 48 megapixel telephoto sensor. The aperture in all 3 of them are varied and they're all optically stabilized, which is awesome. That 4th camera is a 0.3 megapixel time of flight depth sensor, which helps process live focus, or in layman's terms, portrait mode. Let's start with the ultra wide. Generally, it produces respectable results with good dynamic range, saturation, and contrast, but it seriously lacks detail. Samsung tends to apply a softening filter in the shadows and it over-sharpens subjects around the highlights to make up for the detail. And throughout my testing period, I've learned one thing from using this camera. If you're using it in broad daylight, expect over-sharpened photos, and in low light, it applies a super soft filter and it just can't keep up with the competition like the Pixel 4. The OnePlus 8 Pro's ultra wide angle sensor does a much better job because it has a 48 megapixel sensor and there's barely any software processing taking into effect, resulting in cleaner images. There's just no way to get away from Samsung's post-sharpening effect, which really is unfortunate. It honestly looks like a video game render on the S20 Ultra, whereas on the 8 Pro, it's more true to life. The main 108 megapixel sensor is good, but keep in mind that by default, it does pixel bin to produce 12 megapixel images. So if you want to take advantage of that full 108 megapixel sensor, you need to make sure you go into the settings and enable that option. Keep in mind that it doesn't remember that setting, so you will have to manually do that every single time when you open the camera app, which is definitely annoying. The first thing that stood out to me was the detail. You can punch in to retain information, which is pretty cool. I've also noticed that this new sensor has toned back on saturation. In some situations, the picture turns out with too much contrast, which you may or may not like, but generally, it does a great job with dynamic range and sharpness. Samsung still loves to apply that sharpening filter, and given that this is a huge sensor, it does a pretty good job separating the subject from the background, so you don't really have to rely on portrait mode or live focus. However, if you want to get a closer subject in focus, you're gonna have some trouble there because you'll start to notice fringing on the sides and the bokeh tends to be a little weird. It's because it's razor thin, and that's because of the f1.8 aperture. That's one of the biggest drawbacks of a larger sensor, to be honest. Low light performance here is not the greatest. As I mentioned earlier, Samsung just loves to smooth out things. Speaking of which, night mode for some reason ended up being a disaster on my sample. As you can see by this image compared to the OnePlus 8 Pro, it processes the highlights in such an aggressive manner. there's just no hope for restoration here. The telephoto lens once again conveys the same story here. Same old post-sharpening effect, and in some cases, it does mess up exposure. Also, I'm not sure if this is just me, but I'm not a fan of the focal length on the sensor. It crops in too much, especially compared to the OnePlus 8 Pro, but that is a subjective thing. You don't have to agree with me on that. The selfie camera was quite frankly disappointing. As you can see on the image towards the right, this phone just straight up applied a beauty filter and my skin tones look way off. Not only that, it's the pore sharpening effect that I talked about earlier as well. Now, in certain lighting conditions, it does a decent job of reducing all that madness, but overall, I'm really disappointed here due to its inconsistent performance. And then there's the 100x space zoom. I'm just gonna leave these photos here. I tried to be a creep just because, you know, I had to play that role to showcase what it really is. I'm not a zoom guy. You might be. I mean, if you're a private investigator, this is probably the phone for you, because if you want to capture license plates or, you know, if you're investigating someone for someone, this phone is probably something that you should look into because of its space zoom. So this is the front-facing camera test on the S20 Ultra. This phone is packed with video recording features and it's just incredible. So the front-facing camera can shoot up to 4K at 60 frames per second. The rear camera can shoot up to 8K, though I would never really use 8K. I'm perfectly fine with 4K, but man, the video quality coming out of this phone is just insane. The stabilization, the dynamic range, the detail. This is like, I would totally be fine shooting video on the S20 Ultra. No denying the fact. It's absolutely great. I think there is no other Android smartphone that can beat this phone in terms of video quality. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments. Okay, so about that 8K video recording feature, it's going to apply a substantial crop to your image, especially when you switch from 4K to 8K. It's pretty difficult to frame or compose your shot. And the other thing that I want to mention is that if you're planning on shooting 8K video, it is going to chew through storage. And the other thing that I also noticed is that the rolling shutter was pretty terrible with some of the clips. And finally, I do want to mention that I've been experiencing some glitches trying to play back 8K footage on my Windows PC. I have an RTX 2080 Ti. It is supposed to, or it can handle 8K footage, but for some reason, I'm just starting to have issues. You're probably watching this as I'm showcasing it to you guys, so something to keep in mind. All right, I know this has been a long one, but I'm gonna conclude this quickly. For $1,400, the Galaxy S20 Ultra doesn't have that ultra factor that I was looking forward to. There are far too many compromises with this smartphone, and let me list them one by one. The design looks dated, especially compared to what the competition is offering. The display can't push 120Hz and Quad HD at the same time, something that the competition can also do. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the display, it's beautiful, but it's not up to flagship specs, if that makes any sense. The camera performance is not the greatest, especially with that post-sharpening effect that the software applies. And I know someone in the comment is going to be asking me, Eber, did you disable Scene Optimizer? I did. In fact, all of those photos that you saw was taken in auto mode with Scene Optimizer and all the filters turned off. It's basically what the sensor sees. And I know I should have mentioned this in the camera segment, but I'm still experiencing autofocusing issues with that main 108 megapixel sensor, even after the latest software update installed. I just feel like the competition does a better job than this. Listen, if you're in the market looking for a flagship Android smartphone, just do yourself a favor and stay away from the Galaxy S20 Ultra, because Samsung, they were just clearly out of their minds pricing this phone at $1,400. In fact, there's another reason, another perfect reason why you should disregard the S20 Ultra. It's this, the OnePlus 8 Pro. It's $500 cheaper, and in my opinion, it has better camera performance than the S20 Ultra, great display, great battery life, and the design is, I mean, look at this. It's more, come on. So on that note, thank you so much for watching. I hope you were able to take away something from this video. Stay safe, spend responsibly, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.